Let's go Dolphins! Something happened this week that I honestly never expected to see. For once, a major national media personality looked at the Miami Dolphins and didn't focus on what could go wrong. Instead, he focused on what could go right. And the player at the center of that conversation was Malik Willis. Now, before anyone starts planning Super Bowl parades or declaring Willis the next franchise quarterback, there's something we need to talk about. Because the praise he received was enormous. In fact, some of the comparisons and projections being made are the kind of comments that can completely change how fans view a player. But here's the question that's been stuck in my head ever since hearing it. What if the Dolphins really did find something special? What if all the excitement we've been hearing behind the scenes isn't just off-season hype? And what if the rest of the football world is starting to notice something that Dolphins fans have been slowly realizing for months? That's what makes this story so interesting. Not because anyone is guaranteeing success. Not because anyone is claiming Willis has already arrived. But because for the first time in a long time, there seems to be growing belief that Miami may have found a quarterback worth believing in. Before we go any further, make sure you've already smashed that like button if you're excited to see what Malik Willis can do once training camp begins. And today I want to hear from the most optimistic Dolphins fans watching. Drop this comment below right now. Go Dolphins! I believe in this team. Let's flood the comment section with positivity and confidence as we get closer and closer to the start of another season. Now, my personal opinion is simple. I think Dolphins fans should be excited about the positive attention Malik Willis is receiving. But I also think it's important to stay grounded. Off-season praise doesn't win games. Predictions don't win games. What matters is what happens when the lights come on and the season begins. That said, I can't deny something feels different about the way people are talking about Willis right now. The confidence is growing. The expectations are growing. And whether you believe the hype or not, one thing is becoming very clear. Malik Willis is quickly becoming one of the biggest stories surrounding the Miami Dolphins. And what was just said about him might surprise even his biggest supporters. Let's get into it. Let's fill the comment section with positivity as we continue counting down the days until training camp. Now, my personal opinion is very simple. I think Dolphins fans should absolutely be encouraged by positive reports surrounding Malik Willis. But I also think it's important not to crown anybody before they actually step onto the field and prove it. There's a difference between excitement and expectations. And right now, Miami fans are trying to figure out exactly where that line is. Because what was said about Willis has people talking a lot. The conversation started when Colin Cowherd discussed quarterbacks changing teams and finding success in new situations. During that discussion, he pointed directly toward Malik Willis as a player he believes could thrive in Miami. What really stood out wasn't simply that Cowherd mentioned Willis. It was the way he talked about him. According to the discussion, Cowherd pointed toward Willis's recent performances and suggested that what he showed during his opportunities was much more than just decent football. The praise went much further than that. He highlighted efficiency. He highlighted production. He highlighted athletic ability. And perhaps most importantly, he highlighted talent. That immediately grabbed attention across Dolphins circles. Because quarterback is always going to be the biggest story. Every fan base obsesses over it. Every analyst talks about it. And every positive quarterback conversation creates excitement. Especially during the offseason. But here's where things become interesting. Not everyone is ready to completely buy into the hype. And honestly, that's understandable. Because while Cowherd was extremely complimentary toward Willis, there was also a reminder that national analysts don't always get these predictions right. In fact, one of the biggest themes surrounding this discussion is the idea that fans should be careful about taking any prediction as guaranteed truth. Hope is one thing. Reality is another. And the NFL has a way of humbling even the most confident projections. Still, there is something important happening here. The conversation around Malik Willis continues gaining momentum. Whether it's coaches speaking positively, whether it's off-season observations, or whether it's national personalities suddenly paying attention, the noise is growing louder. And that leads to a very important question. Why are more people suddenly talking about Malik Willis? Part of the answer appears to come from what people believe he can become. Not necessarily what he is today, but what he could become if everything comes together. Because when analysts discuss Willis, they consistently bring up similar traits. Arm strength, athleticism, playmaking ability, physical tools, potential. Those are the qualities that create excitement. Those are the qualities that make people believe a player could take a major step forward. And those are the qualities that have Dolphins fans watching very closely. At the same time, there's another side to this discussion. Some fans remain skeptical. Not because they dislike Willis, Not because they want him to fail, but because they've heard offseason hype before. They've heard predictions before. And they know that the real answers only arrive once the games begin. That's what makes this debate so compelling. One side sees possibility. The other side wants proof. And somewhere in the middle sits the truth. What nobody can deny, however, is that the attention surrounding Malik Willis is growing. The expectations are growing. And the spotlight is growing. The question now is whether he can live up to all of it once football starts becoming real again. What makes this next part so fascinating is that the entire argument surrounding Malik Willis isn't really about where he started. It's about where people believe he's headed. Because one of the biggest points being made during this discussion is that context matters. A lot. When people evaluate quarterbacks, they often focus only on statistics. Wins, losses, touchdowns, interceptions. But sometimes the situation surrounding a player matters just as much as the numbers themselves. And that's exactly what some supporters of Willis continue pointing toward. The belief is that his journey has been one of growth, learning, development, and gradually becoming more comfortable in NFL environments. That's why the comments from Colin Cowherd grabbed so much attention. Because he wasn't simply praising Willis for what he has already accomplished. He was talking about what he believes Willis is capable of becoming. And that's a very different conversation. Now, whether Dolphins fans agree with Cowherd or not is another story entirely. Because let's be honest, there are plenty of fans who hear a national analyst make a bold prediction and immediately become skeptical. Especially when that analyst has made controversial predictions in the past. And that's actually one of the most interesting parts of this entire debate. Many Dolphins fans seem torn. On one hand, they like hearing positive things about their quarterback. Who wouldn't? But on the other hand, they don't necessarily want to get carried away by offseason narratives before seeing results on the field. Honestly, I think that's a healthy approach. Because optimism is great. Hope is great. Believing in your team is great. But football ultimately comes down to performance. Everything else is secondary. The encouraging thing for Miami, however, is that Willis continues generating conversations for positive reasons. People are talking about his physical tools. People are talking about his arm strength. People are talking about his ability to create plays. People are talking about his potential ceiling. Those aren't the conversations you hear about players organizations have given up on. Those are the conversations you hear when people believe there's still another level waiting to be unlocked. And that may be the biggest takeaway from this entire story. Potential. Not guarantees. Not promises. Potential. Because every season there are quarterbacks who take major leaps forward. Players who suddenly look more comfortable. Players who finally put everything together. Players who make people wonder why it took so long. And some analysts appear to believe Willis could be one of those stories. At the same time, Dolphins fans aren't ignoring reality. The roster still has questions. The offense still has things to prove. The season hasn't started. Training camp hasn't started. And no amount of praise from television personalities can change what eventually happens between the lines. That's why I think the next few months are going to be so important. Because eventually the discussions stop. Eventually the predictions stop. Eventually the debates stop. And football begins. That's where reputations are made. That's where expectations are tested. And that's where Malik Willis will get the opportunity to show whether all of this growing excitement is just